In Germany, criminal charges have been filed against a teenager for an angry tweet about Olaf Scholz. In November 2024, the student posted on the social media platform X, calling the then-chancellor a bastard. The incident was triggered by a slow download of a Fortnite update due to a poor internet connection. By the time authorities noticed the post, it had garnered only 503 views. Despite this, German law enforcement initiated criminal proceedings against the teenager under Section 188 of the German Criminal Code, assaulting a politician. Authorities demanded that the post be removed, Section 188 of the German Criminal Code, under which the Fortnite fan was prosecuted, provides for criminal punishment for insulting a politician in the form of imprisonment for up to 3 years or a fine in cases where the statement is capable of significantly hindering the public activities of the offended person. After the user deleted the tweet, the criminal proceedings were dropped. About a year later, the teenager published an official letter from the authorities that had been sent to him in connection with the case. It reproduced the text of the tweet itself. Ministers in the Scholz government have repeatedly used Section 188 to prosecute their critics. For example, Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck has filed more than 800 criminal complaints since 2021, one of which was directed against a retiree who posted a parody of him on Twitter. Following this, the police raided the retiree's home at 6 in the morning and confiscated his tablet. Dutch police threatened to take children away from a couple with multiple children who simply happened to be near an anti-immigration protest. Authorities planned to open a temporary center for housing asylum seekers in Loosdrecht, but local residents strongly opposed the move, claiming that the authorities had ignored their views. About 400 protesters gathered outside the building last Wednesday and began setting off fireworks and throwing flares at it. As a result, a fire broke out on the premises. The protesters were dispersed, but people continued to take to the streets despite a state of emergency being declared in the city. One local woman said that she and her husband were waiting for friends near the site of the protest. Police approached them and detained the man for refusing to show his ID. The officers threatened the couple, saying that the state could take their children away for participating in the unrest. The couple has 5 children. Russia and China secretly exchanged military expertise last year. Reuters claims to have reviewed a secret agreement between Moscow and Beijing, signed last summer. It is alleged that the agreement was signed by high-ranking Russian and Chinese officers in the Chinese capital on July 2, 2025. According to the document, approximately 200 Russian military personnel were to undergo training at military facilities in the Beijing, Yibin Shijiaguang, and Nanjing areas. Sources claim that nearly the entire quota was fulfilled. Russia also promised to train Chinese soldiers. At the same time, the parties agreed not to disclose any information about this project publicly. Specific dates for the visits are not mentioned. According to the leaked documents, the Russians were to undergo training in the use of UAVs and electronic warfare systems, as well as receive practical training in Army aviation and armored infantry operations. An Indian man who stabbed an 18-year-old British man to death invited his relatives to the crime scene, where they laughed at the dying victim. Police officers who arrived at the scene did not believe that the victim, who was complaining of difficulty breathing, was injured and handcuffed him. The trial in the murder case of student Henry Novak continues in Southampton. On December 3rd, the young man called 23-year-old Vikram Digwa a bad guy, after which Digwa attacked him with a knife and then stole his phone. Before Novak's condition became critical, members of Digwa's family arrived at the scene of the crime. In video footage presented in court, Vikram and his relatives claimed that Novak allegedly committed a racist attack. Novak himself denies this in the recordings and repeatedly states that he was stabbed. The attacker appeared in court on charges of murder and illegal possession of a bladed weapon. His mother, 53-year-old Kiran Kaur, is charged with aiding and abetting the offender. She allegedly helped her son hide the murder weapon. On May 15th, it was revealed that after the conflict between Henry and Digva ended, police handcuffed the injured man. He then bled to death, yet the law enforcement officers, who are at least indirectly responsible for the Englishman's death, will not face charges. The BBC, known for its propaganda, has published a report. in which the practice of Afghans selling their own daughters is portrayed as a difficult choice dictated by poverty. A team from the BBC News Service visited the city of Chagtran, which has extremely high unemployment. In particular, one of the people interviewed by the publication earned about $8 in a week. And UN data shows that 75% of Afghans cannot meet their basic needs. According to the BBC, poverty allegedly justifies men who are willing to sell their children to adult men who marry them or use them as domestic helpers. The daughter of one of the Afghans who spoke with the publication was sold at age 5, and by age 10, she will be married off as well. According to another resident of the Islamic country, the money from the sale of his 7-year-old daughter may be enough to support his other children for 4 years. His choice was described by journalists as unbearable. The BBC attributes the current situation not to Islamic traditions, but to the actions of the Taliban government, which deprived women of access to education. In reality, the active migration to Europe of Afghans who allegedly fled the Taliban has brought their customs into the civilized world. The US and the EU have reached a trade agreement. European goods exported to the US will be subject to 15% tariffs, while Washington's access to the European market will be virtually MEP Jelena Zavko proudly announced the conclusion of the agreement. According to Brussels, the deal helped avert a destructive escalation of transatlantic trade disputes. On May 8, Donald Trump gave EU officials 2 months to implement a duty-free regime for American goods. Last July, an agreement was reached under which the EU must eliminate tariffs on American products, expand investment in the country, and guarantee purchases of energy resources and military equipment from the U.S. The deal also provides for expanded imports from the U.S. of nuts, dairy products, pork, fruits, vegetables, and seafood on preferential terms. At the same time, sensitive sectors of the European economy, such as beef and poultry production, remain protected by existing tariffs.